Today we're going to look at substance addiction from a spiritual perspective.
All too often we look at addiction from the outside, how it affects the body and how it destroys lives and how families get disrupted and how the body of the one who's addicted gets all messed up. But what about the spiritual implications and what really happens from a spiritual perspective?
Yes, so looking at this idea of physical addiction on a metaphysical plane and what's going on underneath the surface of addiction. So if we look at a substance, a drug, from a metaphysical standpoint, it has a vibrational frequency. It has characteristics that are almost programmed into the structures of that substance. And if we consume that substance, then we ourselves are inviting those characteristics, those vibrational frequencies into our bodies and basically allowing ourselves to become a host to the invasive substance.
In a way, it's like a possession, right?
I wouldn't say a possession, more as like a virus to its host. Right? It's inhabiting, and it has its own program that it wants to run now inside of you. And instead of you being the one in control of your own life, now that substance is the one controlling your life. And therefore, you now become kind of a shadow of yourself, so to speak.
And kind of the evidence for that is that whoever takes that particular substance, be it alcohol or a particular type of drug, you will find the same characteristics happening in all that group of people subject to that particular substance. It means that, as you said, that substance has a character.
Yes.
That virus, so to speak, that has a nature. And it now lives like an alien inside of you, and you are the host, moving at the mercy of that virus. And since that virus is identical, it's crafted in a laboratory or in some factory, those people then subject to its substance are all demonstrating the same characteristics. You see the same physiology, the same energy, the same behavior.
Well, if you drive down the streets of certain places where fentanyl is a really big drug, and it looks like literally The Walking Dead is, everybody's just hanging around in this kind of bizarre zombie-like state. And so that's a really good way to picture it of what's going on. And so where is that person's consciousness gone while that drug is inhabiting them and taking inactive?
And that's what makes it dangerous, right? Because now my sense of awareness, my sense of self-governance is now gone, and from a spiritual perspective,
it's being held hostage.
Right, it's held
by
hostage,
the substance. Yes,
right.
It's suppressed, and so what happens, psychically, is your spiritual energetic field is generally emitting out around you, and it's like a protective aura, basically, and that kind of energetically sets this nice little perimeter around you to be able to intuitively feel, positive, negative energy. I should go here, I should go there, I shouldn't do this. There's so much protection in that. And what happens is when you take a substance and now that substance is taken over and suppressed, that now withdraws in, that auric field has now been squashed down deep inside, and so therefore you become extremely vulnerable to your environment. And so you become subject to abuse and committing crimes and doing all kinds of things that you're basically a puppet.
From a therapeutic standpoint, you become hyper suggestible.
Hyper suggestible. So basically, whatever the external world feeds you, you're just going to believe it. You know, somebody can tell you to go steal a car, and that sense of self, if you're really, you know, lost deep within, you'll go and do it.
And so when that happens, right, when you have lost that sense of self, when you become hyper suggestible, now what drives you? And that is really the virus. Its characteristic, its nature. It's going to drive your behavior. So rather than I'm having an I consciousness that is awake and present and has discerning capabilities, it being suppressed now makes me, then the host takes over. I become a host, and that drug and its needs and its characteristic, like an alien functioning within me, it starts to dictate my behavior and where I go and what I do. And what does it want? It wants more
to feed itself. To sustain its life. It wants to really keep you hooked into allowing it to live within you and inhabit you and do what it wants to do, not what you want to do. And that's where you really feel that struggle when somebody is coming off a drug and they actually want to get clean, and they're like, I want to, you know, get rid of this addiction. I want to get rid of it. But then boom, that comes in, that power of that drug wanting to sustain itself comes in and starts to hit your own self-governing desire to be free from it. That's when you start to really feel all those intense side effects of the detoxification, because it's like that last ditch effort for that substance to just really dig in and hold on to you. But that's also a good thing, because that means that you have now started to regain feeling of your own self again.
Right.
Whereas before, when you're really deeply under the influence, you're totally lost from it.
You're not there.
And so it's a good sign that you're having those withdrawal feelings, because that means you're starting to feel yourself again, aside from the substance and the symptoms of it. So you know, that's the pinnacle point to really push through and regain access to your spiritual power, your spiritual self, because that assertion of that spiritual self is much more powerful than the programming of the substance. And so it's that pinnacle point when you really gotta push through and dig deep spiritually into yourself to regain that powerful, you know, wealth of your ability to assert your own energy over the substance.
And so the metaphysical remedy is to, you know, create an increased sense of self-awareness.
Yes.
And to purify this system from the virus that has been occupying my system, so that rather than me being a host of that virus and my whole sense of self being suppressed, that I allow, from a metaphysical perspective, what needs to be done is that reawakening of the self.
Reawakening of the self, but also therapeutically, from a hypnosis standpoint, when we work with people with addiction, what we have found, and from my own self, is that at what point did you lose connection with yourself? It could be early in childhood, could be from abuse. You shut down, you want to get away from the world. It's an escape. There's some power in reconnecting with that point when this all started to change.
And that's important, right? Because it is said that in addiction, once the addiction really kicks in, your emotional, spiritual growth actually stops at that point. So let's say somebody has been heavily addicted for 20 years. Their emotional age is, let's say they start getting addicted at 20, and at 40 they start to clean up. their emotional age when they stop actually is 20 years because they haven't really consciously lived that life. And so what you said is critical, right? You have to go back to that point at 20. So where did I lose my sense of self, my autonomy? Where and so you're not treating somebody at the age of 40, you're treating them psychologically at the age of 20. And that has to be a spiritual quest.
Yeah, yeah.
What made me lose?
Yeah.
What was it in me that I lost my sense of self? How can I regain and reclaim
your
that
inherent spiritual power?
Right. And that's and that's why this is often a metaphysical problem, is it?
It really, really is, and it can be so beneficial for people to regain connection with themselves on a higher level, and they do have the power to get clean. They do have the power to step away from the substance that was, it's taking over as a crutch in compensation for something else that's missing in your life.
Right.
And what support that's giving you, and also physically on a chemical level, but that spiritually, if you can get underneath the surface and see it from a metaphysical standpoint, then you have a broader perspective of how to treat it and how to be able to really go at it from a more comprehensive standpoint, to be able to really treat the whole person spiritually and physically, not just from the physical.
Yeah, and so you're strengthening the sense of I consciousness, and also you're rebuilding, and that's where energy healing and things like this come in. You're starting to rebuild their energetic field, their aura, their subtle body, as we call it, right? So because that has completely shrunk away, that defense mechanism, that's why they're still very suggestible to the outside. Wrong company, bad friends, because there's no bound, there's no buffer energetically. So you have to do two things. One is to regain sense of self, retrace where all of this happened, and then rebuild it. And also energetically to start feeding that astral body with yogic techniques, breath work, sound healing, whatever technique you're using.
And spiritual company, that you put yourself in those environments that are going to nurture that part of yourself. And so that's a really big one for addicts, is addicts hang out with addicts. Why? Because it continues to feed that substance. And generally addicts of certain substances hang out in certain groups. And so that, as you can see right then and there, what happens if you extract yourself from the environment that feeds it? Then you're going to start to starve that substance. And that you're going to start to feel all the things that are going to come up from that. But that's a good thing. That means you're starting to regain access to your own self, your higher self.
And then the critical part is to have that holy company that
you want to replace it with
and also
energy.
at that point, you're going to be confronted with what made you 20 years ago walk away from this sense of self. And so not only do you need company to keep that virus away, you're going to need company to build you. And when you are reconfronted with those same issues, because emotionally you haven't grown during all those years, you have just kind of suppressed it. So you're going to be back at square one. And that's where you need support, help, love, community, holy company to then, being able this time
to support you and to acknowledge that you do need support in that process, and that you can't isolate yourself and just try and wither it away. You have to still feed the positive aspect of yourself.
You need a guru. Even the great sage Ramakrishna used to say, even if you want to be a pickpocket, you need a guru. There's no shame in having a guru, to having a support group. You don't have to do it all by yourself and suffer. Have a teacher, have a community, have a counselor, have a therapist, somebody who really is there for you during
ideally everything.
Everybody.
You want to set yourself up for success, and you want to implement all those things that need to be in place in order for you to really make the transformation, which can happen. You can make the transformation. It's the power within you that can make that change if you allow it and to be patient and to give yourself, positive reinforcement. And that seeking of everything being, a blissful experience. So drugs, so to speak, those substances are going to cause that cascade effect of dopamine and all those hormones that make you feel good and make you feel blissful. But what you're forgetting is that those are already naturally within you, that there's a way to access that without the substance.
And isn't that all the more reason why we need to look at this metaphysically, right? Because it is only through the spiritual quest and through the purification of the nervous system, through the spiritual practices, that we learn to access those bliss.
Yes, the bliss state, which is the true nature of your being.
So you cannot do away with the metaphysical side, even in the healing from addiction. You have to replace that kick that you got with something better, and you're going to feel the difference. You're going to feel the difference when it comes from within you, and you learn to access. And I think this is kind of the malady of today's world, that we are not being taught how to access the bliss state. And you definitely should watch our video about the 5 levels of happiness, because there we will actually show you how to access these 5 levels of happiness and what really is required to do so.
Yeah, absolutely. It is a formula, just like yoga is a formula to regain access to your higher self. And that natural state of being is bliss. It's Sat Chit Ananda, existence, knowledge, and bliss. And that is who and what you are as a spiritual being. And so it's all the other things that pile on top of that make us physical, that we now identify with, and that becomes our experience of reality through that channel of whatever we've decided to compile onto that.
Well, in conclusion, we could say that in a way then we're all addicted to seeking our joy outside of ourselves in perpetual motion, but that we are not really looking enough inside to discover. And that is what yoga is, what spirituality is. Can I generate this kick from within myself? And once I could, do I really need anything else?
Well, that is meditation. That's like the whole. You don't just sit in meditation just to sit there and
to be aware of
empty.
What exactly?
No, you sit in meditation so that you can experience the bliss of the self. You can be completely absorbed in love and light on a cosmic level and be absorbed into an experience of oneness. I mean, really nothing can top that. No drug, no substance or experience can top that, because that's what you are outside of the body. When your body dies, that's what you are. Before you're born, that's what you are. And so you're just experiencing that while you're here on earth.
And it's not so far-fetched. This can be easily connected to during our meditation. All it takes is an understanding first, and secondly, a little application. And irrespective of whether you're addicted or not, if you're looking for higher levels of happiness, that's where the secret key to unlock the internal joy really is, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
All right, well, this is a wonderful discussion. Thank you again, and please do not forget to like and subscribe.
Yeah, and if you have any questions more about this topic or experiences or anything you'd like to share in the comments below, we'd be happy to read those. And we'll see you in the next video.